no particular order. He said there is a timetable constructed by those inside this organized force. Suicide will be promoted in its own right. He's talking about the future, of course. There will be a planned economic collapse of the United States to further the acceptance of the global system. The population must be limited to 2 children per family. The government will promote contraception by making it universally acceptable. He said this in 1969. Sex outside of marriage will be promoted. He went on to say that men would become more feminized and women more masculine. Sex would be more out in the open and encouraged outside of marriage. Travel would become a privilege to increase control of individuals and families. Bridges and roads would be allowed to deteriorate. We would become desensitized to violence. Musicians would use coded messages to reach the young people. He went on to say terrorism would increase so that the public would relinquish control of their lives to an increasing government. Abortion will become normal and tax-supported. Fathers would have no say in the abortion issue. He said this 3 years before the Roe v. Wade decision making abortion was legal. Homosexuality will be encouraged. Ultimately, reproduction will be without sex, meaning it will all be done in test tubes. Divorce will be more prevalent. Living with your partner would become preferred. Women will be encouraged to work outside the family. Men will be constantly transferred by their companies to produce tension within the family. Euthanasia, meaning the killing of old people, will become common. They will be declared to not be useful anymore in the new society. Costs of medical care will increase so that old people cannot obtain it. Medicine will become tightly controlled. If you don't have a job, you won't be able to get medical attention. Medical care will be keyed to your job. If you have a job, you will get medical attention. Going to a hospital will become a privilege, not a right. Later, only those with medical insurance will be allowed into a hospital. Hospitals will be used to confine criminals as a way of using drugs and chemicals to alter their behavior. Doctors will become employees of companies, no longer to be considered as the employee of the patient. Soon, listen to this, soon new diseases will appear for which there will be no cure. He said this years before, AIDS was intentionally created by the World Health Organization. That's a whole other subject, one of which I won't cover in this lecture today. But that's true. AIDS was a man-created disease, and it sounds like Dr. Day was predicting it back in 1969. He went on to say that the purpose of these new diseases will be to reduce the population. He also went on to say that religion will be destroyed. He commented that the Bible will be rewritten with key words changed or altered. Education will slowly reduce the amount of information transmitted. Kids will not learn as much. The school year will be prolonged, including the teaching of students during the summer. Not everyone will be allowed to own books. He went on to say the government will be getting into gambling. The drug use will increase with the purpose of increasing law enforcement. He said music will become worse with the specific purpose of changing the thoughts of the listeners. Identification will become required with something being implanted in the hand or forehead of every American. I'll be specifically showing you in a few more minutes that the latest technology in this field is just around the corner. Dr. Day continued, food consumption will be reduced so that its distribution will have to be controlled and no fugitive from justice will be able to get food. Weather will become controllable to cause droughts and floods to reduce the food supply. He said world government will occur with an increase in the power of the United Nations. Inflation of the money supply would lead to a single banking system. Taxes would become progressive, meaning that the rich will be taxed to a higher degree so that few could assemble wealth. Credit would be extremely available so that many will go into heavy debt. Private ownership of housing will cease. High costs of housing would prevent new purchasers from buying homes. Census information would provide personal information. The number of bedrooms, kitchens, bathrooms, etc. will become part of the census information. He said this in 1969. Real-life heroes who exemplify old-fashioned values will disappear. Entertainers and celebrities, rather than the national heroes of the past, would be promoted as the heroes of children because they would advocate a wide-open lifestyle. I want you to remember, as I said several times during that explanation, that these comments were made in 1969, over 25 years ago. He said identification will become required with something being implanted in the head, or the hand rather, or forehead of every American. And I would now like to take a few moments to show you that this is closer than ever. The technology to implant a biochip into each American is now here, and there are those in America planning the date when we shall be asked to accept one in our body. The article quotes Tim Willard of the World Future Society, he's an executive officer, as saying this: conceivably, a number could be assigned at birth and go with a person throughout life. Most likely, it would be implanted on the back of the right or left hand for convenience. It could be used as a universal identification card that would replace credit cards, passports, and that sort of thing. At the checkout stand as a supermarket, you would simply pass your hand over a scanner and your bank account would automatically be debited. The order is already in place in Communist China. It's already here. China has had a strong 6,000-year-old tradition of family and religion, but all of that has been eliminated by the Communist government in China. Right now, today, in China, couples are are married by the state and then separated. All married men live together with the other married men. Women live with other married women. Couples may see each other on Saturday mornings for 3 hours between 9 and noon. In other words, there is no family unit anywhere on the communes in China. If the married couple wants children, they are permitted by the government to have one child. But that child is taken away from the parents shortly after birth and raised by the commune. The parents are allowed one Saturday morning visit with their child from 9 to noon, but if the parents show any affection during that visit, the parents will be allowed no further visits with their child. Chinese tradition states that the oldest child is to provide for his parents when they become old. So if that one child that they are allowed to have by the Communist government is female, the parents oftentimes kill that baby and then take her dead body to the Communist Party and then turn her in so that they can obtain another permit for a child. And the result is predictable. There are more little boys than there are little girls. This is not a good sign for the future because the Chinese won't be able to keep their population at an even keel if they can't find enough women to produce offspring. The article says this, that for a bribe of $50, a doctor will tell whether a Chinese woman is pregnant with a boy or a girl. Then, if the pregnant woman finds out it is a girl, the parent gets an abortion. In other words, they want young boy children and not girl children. The article pointed out that the sex ratio of newborn children in China last year reached 119 boys for every 100 girls. And it went on to point out that more than 12% of all female babies were aborted. So in China, the family is making decisions to kill babies just because they are their own sex. And the reason they are doing that is because the Communist state has determined that they have the right to control the family. Also in the commune in China, there is no right to private property. There is no private ownership of any property, including housing. There is no right to practice your religious views. There is no right to travel. There is no right to engage in an occupation other than farm work. In other words, the New World Order is already in place in China, and it appears to be working. The New World Order is completely functioning in China. The communism that is the result of the Chinese Communist Revolution of 1923 to 1949 is working. And it might be important at this point to mention that it was the government of the United States that gave communism to China during the Bloody Revolution. It was the United States government that assisted Zhou Enlai and Mao Tse-tung in the intentional killing of as many as 60 million Chinese during the revolution, just so the government of the United States could give China the New World Order. The fact that it was the government of the United States that assisted the Chinese communists kill 60 million Chinese is covered in my book entitled The Unseen Hand. There is no question that 60 million Chinese people died so that the government of the United States could give China the New World Order. The experiment is working. Now, what all of this proves is that the old world order is crumbling right in front of our very eyes. Let me give you just one more example to summarize all that I've said in the last few minutes. What is happening is that good old-fashioned common sense is rapidly disappearing. Those things that we once held dear are being mocked, ridiculed, and abandoned. Those things that were once not talked about are coming out into the open. Those things that were once thought to be socially wrong are now being accepted. For instance, this little article appeared in our evening paper here in Tucson on February the 25th, 1993. It says that the 6th through 9th grade students are being asked about cannibalism in an essay contest run by the Maricopa Bar Association. Maricopa County is the county north of Tucson, and Phoenix, our state capital, is the county seat of that county. A bar association is, of course, an organization of lawyers banded together for a common purpose. The article went on to report that the students were being asked to respond to a hypothetical problem-solving exercise. The students were asked to consider what they would do if they were among 3 junior high friends trapped in a cave. Realizing that they can't live without food for more than 30 days, they decide to draw lots to see who will be killed so that the others can survive. A half hour after they kill one of the students, they are rescued. And the winner of this dilemma wins a $50 savings bond and a plaque. 50 years ago, the bar would have been disbanded for bringing up such a hideous subject in such a stupid essay contest, but today the Bar Association conducts this contest to see who can best murder one of their fellow students. Notice that the students in the essay contest were asked to accept the decision to kill one of their classmates by deciding which one of the 3 would be eliminated. To solve the problem, as stipulated by the Bar Association, you have to murder one of your fellow students. But this conclusion of the essay contest appears to be acceptable because the Maricopa Bar Association said that it was a subject worthy of discussion. Quite simply, all of the old restraints are crumbling. The old world order is crumbling before our very eyes. This is a picture of Al Gore, our new vice president. And this is a book he wrote in 1992 entitled The Earth in Balance. He also talked about changes coming to our civilization. I'd like to read the entire quote first through all the way, and then go back and attempt to explain what he meant. Here's what Al Gore wrote in 1992 on page 48. Check it out if you don't believe me. Page 48. Our challenge is to accelerate the needed change in thinking about our relationship to the environment in order to shift the pattern of our civilization to a new equilibrium. This change in thinking will also follow the pattern described in chaos theory, with little change evident until a threshold is passed. Mr. Gore went on, and then as key assumptions are modified, a flood of dramatic changes will occur all at once. Now let's see what Mr. Gore was talking about. I'd like to read that quote again, this time one section at a time, so that we can analyze just what Mr. Gore is trying to tell us. Here's what he wrote. Our challenge is to accelerate the needed change in thinking. Here Mr. Gore is telling us that the changes are desirable and that we must hasten the day when we create the new civilization. He continues, we must accelerate the needed change in thinking about our relationship to the environment. So we must change our thinking about the environment. Today we think that individuals own the environment through the right to own private property. We must change the thinking so that the government will own it. That would explain what he means here. He wants the government to own the environment so that the people cannot abuse it. He goes on, in order to shift the pattern of our civilization to a new equilibrium. We believe in the concept of private property in our current civilization. As I said, individuals own the environment under the God-given right to own private property. I would call that thought the equilibrium, the center point, the thought that is the center of all of our thinking about the environment. If we change it, we must make a new equilibrium, and that new thought is the thought that the government must own all the private property. So Mr. Gore is advocating a form of socialism here. Socialism means that the private property must be owned and controlled by the government. Al Gore continues, this change in thinking will also follow the pattern described in chaos theory. Now, I've not finished the book yet, so I don't know what he means by the phrase chaos theory, but I believe he means that this conspiracy will create the crisis that will lead to their desired chaos so that they can offer their desired solution to the chaos so that we will accept their new world order, a new civilization. Mr. Gore continues, with little change evident until a threshold is passed. Here Mr. Gore is saying that there is a single event coming, one that this conspiracy will create so that we will accept their new world order. He continues, then, as key assumptions are modified, a flood of dramatic changes will occur all at once. What Vice President Al Gore was saying was that there is a new civilization coming and that they will create a crisis in the environment to force us to accept it. If that happened, they would force upon us, quote, a flood of dramatic changes in our civilization, unquote. But Al Gore is not the only one talking about a new civilization. This is Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, one of the pioneer thinkers about the future of the world. She created an organization called the Theosophical Society in 1875 that published her books and lectures. She wrote a 2-volume set entitled Isis Unveiled in 1877, in which she stated, quote, the day is approaching when the world will receive the proofs that only ancient religions were in harmony with nature. So the religions of the world of today are out of harmony with nature, and Al Gore and Helena Petrovna Blavatsky are telling us that the new religion coming will put mankind in accord with the environment. Al Gore and Helena Petrovna Blavatsky are warning us that the old way of looking at things in the environment is obsolete, and that after the threshold is crossed, we'll receive a new way of looking at things. I'd like to return now to the book entitled The Externalization of the Hierarchy by Alice Bailey. This book was written in 1957, so she was one of the earliest to put this thought in writing. This is what she said on pages 278 and 279. The new era is coming, the new ideals, the new civilization. Notice, by the way, that Al Gore talked about a new civilization. Alice Bailey continued, the new modes of life, of education, of religious presentation, and of government are slowly precipitating, and she said, naught can stop them. So the new changes are coming, and no one can stop them. She was saying that the new world order is coming and that no one will stand in its way. She went on to point out that there are some people trying to stop this new civilization. She said they can, however, be delayed by the reactionary types of people, by the ultra-conservative and closed minds. She went on, they are the ones, those reactionaries and ultra-conservatives, are the ones who can and do hold back the hour of liberation. So the ultra-conservative types, meaning people like me, are delaying their plans of exposing them. And notice that she terms her plans the hour of liberation. We are going to be liberated from the old ideas by the new ideas. Man will be free when we adopt her program for the New World Order. This thought will be explored later in this lecture so that you will understand exactly why we thought we needed liberating. I'd like to go back and add another thought from Helena Petrovna Blavatsky on the same subject. She says this on page Roman numeral 7 of her book entitled Isis Unveiled. The drift of modern thought is palpably in the direction of liberalism in religion as well as science. Each day brings the reactionists. Now here she's talking about those who favor keeping the old world order, the old civilization. So each day brings the reactionists nearer to the point where they must surrender the despotic authority over the public conscience, which they have so long enjoyed and exercised. So there are people hanging on to their old world order, and someday those of us who live the way we are living our lives must surrender to those who want to change our civilization. And then she tells us what is coming. She writes, "Our work, then, is a plea for the recognition of the anciently universal wisdom religion. So the way to dissolve the old world order is through religion, so that it will replace the old. There is a new civilization that is coming that will replace the old. There is a new way of doing things that will replace the old. And those new ways of doing things is called the New World Order." This is Albert Pike. He was a leading member of the Masons, an organization I will identify a little later in this lecture. And he also talked about change. He wrote this book entitled Morals and Dogma, perhaps the most important book ever written by any member of the Masonic Lodge. In this book, on page 734, he says this: "There is in nature one most potent force, by means whereof a single man, who could possess himself of it, and should know how to direct it, could revolutionize and change the face of the world. This force was known to the ancients." He said, "It was adored in the sacred rites of the temple under the hieroglyphic figure of Baphomet and the hermaphroditic goat of Mendes." We will explore the god known as Baphomet and the goat of Mendes later in this lecture. But Mr. Pike was saying that those who know who this god is have a force in their hands that can revolutionize the way we live our lives. We have been examining that force and will continue to do so throughout the remainder of this lecture. One of the ways we are being prepared to accept this new world order is through the media. And I think it would be interesting to ask and then answer the question: what are the purposes of Geraldo Rivera, Sally Jesse Raphael, Phil Donahue, and Oprah Winfrey? And the answer is simple. Their job is simply to tell us daily that the old world order is falling apart right before our eyes. Adultery, child abuse, alcoholism, drug use, parental disputes, homosexuality, lesbianism, and all of the other traditional aberrations are being shown on these programs to be quite normal and expected. These talk shows are showing us daily that marriage leads to divorce and to wife abuse. Parenting leads to child abuse. Raising children leads to disagreements. And all of this is not fun. So once we believe that, we can change how we live. They are telling us, don't get married, don't raise children, don't love your husband, because if you do, he will beat you. Don't discipline your children. They can get along perfectly well without your interference. This is the reason these shows are on the networks. They are showing us that the old ways no longer work. And the reason is clear. We are being taught that the old ways of doing things, called the old world order, is no longer adequate to meet the needs of the people. And that we must concern ourselves with replacing these mores with new ones called the New World Order. And all of this was predicted. This is what Orwell wrote. The old civilizations claimed that they were founded on love and justice. Ours is founded on hatred. He said, in our world, there will be no emotions except fear, rage, triumph, and self-abasement. Everything else, we shall destroy everything. He said, we have cut the links between child and parent, and between man, and between man and woman. He said, no one dares trust a wife or a child or a friend any longer. But in the future, there will be no wives and no friends. Children will be taken from their mothers at birth. The sex instinct will be eradicated. Procreation will be, I'm sorry, the thing's not advancing. I gotta wait for it to cycle. Okay. Children will be taken from their parents at birth, their mothers at birth. He said the sex instinct will be eradicated. Procreation will be an annual formality, like the renewal of a ration card. There will be no laughter except the triumph over a defeated enemy. There will be no art, no literature, no science. There will be no curiosity. He said, all competing pleasures will be destroyed. I want you to know that George Orwell just described the New World Order. George Orwell just described the New World Order that George Bush spoke about. The New World Order of Orwell is the New World Order of George Bush. And to show you that what Mr. Orwell talked about is happening, let me refer you to an action taken by the United Nations. On January the 26th, 1990, the United Nations formally signed a comprehensive document with the stated purpose of protecting the children worldwide from tyranny and exploitation. This is a picture on the front row, a little bit off to the left, of then President George Bush attending the conference. More than 70 heads of state gathered in New York to approve the document, and George Bush was there. The article says this: in the days before the summit, both houses of U.S. Congress hurriedly passed resolutions calling on President Bush to sign the convention and then send it to the Senate for ratification before attending the summit. Although he voiced support for the convention, George Bush did not sign it, but the United Nations did. This document is called the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, and it contains 30 articles. I'm going to read just 4 of them to show you that the purpose of this convention is to further erode the family as a unit. Let's read 4 of the articles approved by the United Nations. Article 13 grants your child freedom of expression and the right to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas of all kinds in the form of art or other media of the child's choice. Let's say that you discover that your son, and for the purpose of saving time, I'm going to refer to all children in this discussion is in the male gender. Let's say that your son has started reading pornography and you don't believe that he should. You can't object, because to do so would deny him of the right to receive ideas of all kinds. Let's say that you discover that he has rented X-rated movies to view on your VCR in your home, and you don't think it is good for him to view this material. The United Nations does not want you to deny him his right to seek all kinds of information. So you go to jail and the state takes your son. Article 14 guarantees freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. If your child wishes to worship with the neighborhood family of another faith, or if he doesn't wish to join with you as you practice your faith, you cannot prevent him from attending those other services. You can't require that he attend your services with the rest of your family. Let's say that he starts going to a satanic mass as his choice of religion, and you object. You can't stop him because he has the right of religious freedom. Article 15 prohibits any restriction on a child's freedom of association, except as is necessary for national security. You cannot restrict his right to associate with people you don't approve of, but the government can if they draft him and put him into the army. In other words, they can force him to associate or restrict his right to associate in the army, but you can't if he joins a street gang that you don't approve of, for instance. Notice that the current argument about allowing straights to associate with gays in the armed forces is a forced association of those who don't want to share toilet facilities with gays. Sounds like the United Nations and not the government of the United States is mandating that gays and straights live together in the armed forces. The government can force him to associate with those you wouldn't want him to associate with for public safety or for other reasons. They can jail him for crimes that you were unable to prevent him from committing, and then force him to associate with people you couldn't prevent him from associating with. Article 16 grants absolute right of privacy to any child, including privacy from his or her parents. Let's say that you suspect that your son has hidden some drug paraphernalia in his room, and you want to search his room and locate it. You can't do that because he has the right to privacy in your home. Notice that the room that your son occupies now belongs to your son and not to you. It is your home, but it is his room. Why does the United Nations offer these ideas? There is only one purpose. The purpose of the United Nations is to destroy universally the family so that the New World Order, which is rapidly approaching, will succeed. And there were some in the United States Senate who wanted the family unit to be destroyed. They wanted this resolution passed. Everyone who listens to television knows that child abuse is rampant. Parents all over the country are bashing their children to such an extent that society has begun to respond. Law number 603.1 in New Hampshire defines child abuse as any intentional striking of a minor by any method whatsoever, including an open hand. So if the parent wishes to spank their child in New Hampshire, it is now against the law. So the child who acts intolerably cannot be punished by spanking as a method of improving behavior. Discipline will become obsolete. Only the society will have the right to discipline your wayward son. They will have the right to jail him after he commits some crime because he could not be disciplined by you as a young child. So it becomes important now to examine why it is that we as children generally lived with our parents as we were growing up. And secondly, why our parents were one man and one woman. And it's simply because our parents were free to choose and they could have chosen not to live that way. So the question is, why did they choose to live that way? And the answer is very simple. They chose to believe in a God. And because they chose to believe that that God wanted them to live that way. Because our parents generally believed that the God of the Bible made the family and that he wanted that family to be one man and one woman. And that he wanted the parents to raise that child themselves. And that they were to discipline that child so that he would grow up to be a decent and moral citizen. We are certainly free to choose not to live as man and wife. We are certainly free to choose not to have our children live with us as parents. And if we eliminate the concept of religion and the concept that there is a God, we will feel no guilt if we do these things considered to be a sin by religion. If we eliminate God in religion, we can choose to live another way. And that other way is called the New World Order. Why must we have a new civilization to be called the New World Order? There is a severe crisis coming. We will put a date on when these changes are coming a little later. Now let's discuss exactly what this New World Order is. We've seen that it appears to be the exact opposite of the Old World Order, and it is. Perhaps the best summary of this New World Order was offered by Pierre-Joseph Proudhon, a French writer and socialist who wrote this in the 1850s. He wrote, this socialist, our principle is atheism in religion, meaning there will be no worship of the God of the Bible in the future, anarchy in politics, meaning there will be no restraints on the people by any government in the future, and no property in the economic sphere, meaning there will be no right to private property. We'll connect all of this in a few minutes, but what he described is the New World Order. Mr. Proudhon understood. The next question I'd like to examine is why there are some who believe that we must change our way of living. Why must we have a new civilization? One who answered that question was B.F. Skinner, chairman of the psychology department at Harvard University. He has been called the most influential psychologist of our times. So when he speaks, we are taught that we should listen. He has written a book entitled Beyond Freedom and Dignity, in which he writes this. Hold on, America. Listen to this. We can no longer afford freedom, so it must be replaced with control over man, his conduct, and his culture. Why must we abolish freedom? Because freedom has enabled us, Americans, to literally destroy the world. For example, we've caused pollution in the environment. We've overpopulated the planet, and this overpopulation has caused famines, and that has starved millions of people all over the world. We, in the industrialized free world, have allowed the free enterprise system to enable the rich to steal all of the property from the poor. Marriages are ending in divorce. Child abuse is rampant. Banks and savings and loans are failing all over America, and corruption in business and government is everywhere. Now, we do not have to live this way. This can all change. A new civilization has to be created to replace the old civilization. A new civilization will end all of these abuses and the new civilization is called the New World Order. But those who want the New World Order will not tell us that they were the ones who caused the problems in the first place. It has been reported that the students at Stanford University in California had a rally in which they were asked to chant, "Hey, hey, ho, ho, Western Civ has got to go." They were not demanding that the administration of the university stop the teaching of a course known as Western Civ 101A. They were talking about the very way all of us live our lives. So the demand for change is everywhere, and change is coming. Another group of people are also looking for a change, are also looking for a new world order. This is a book written by a witch entitled An ABC of Witchcraft, Past and Present. And on page 15 of her book, this witch says, people are advancing towards a new society. Notice that the author does not say that this new society is called the New World Order, but the author says that a new society is coming. And secondly, notice that she claims that the future she envisions is an advancement over the old society. But we, the people, don't want these changes to a new civilization. We're going to have to be tricked or deceived into accepting them. And here's the way we're going to make the change. I'd like to return now to the book written by Aldous Huxley entitled Brave New World Revisited. He told us this in that book. In the end, they, meaning the people, will lay their freedom at our feet. Notice that Mr. Huxley was claiming to be one of those in charge because he said our feet, meaning the feet of the controllers, and to say to us, make us your slaves, but feed us. So Mr. Huxley felt that he was one of them, one of these controllers. What he was saying was that we, the people, are going to get hungry, and when we do get hungry, we would demand these changes. We are going to surrender our freedoms to the controllers for some food, but it doesn't have to be a famine. They could use many other alternative plans. It could be an economic collapse to make us give up our freedoms. It could be a nuclear terrorist attack. It could be a supposed threat from these so-called UFOs. It could be a major environmental disaster. But the point is that we, the people, will ask them to give us the New World Order in trade for our freedoms. That is what Mr. Huxley said in his book. So there is a planned calamity coming, perhaps a famine, to convince us to give up our freedoms. We are going to be told that that will be the only way to meet the crisis. But he is not the only one talking about dramatic change. Benjamin Creme has written about this, and I would like to refer to another quote in his book entitled The Reappearance of the Christ and the Masters of Wisdom. Here's what Benjamin Creme wrote. We are moving into a period of climax, leading to events which will fundamentally alter life as we know it. Tremendous changes are taking place in all departments of life, preparatory to the establishment of entirely new modes of social living and relationship. He went on to write about the reorganization of our political, economic, and social life. And on page 33 of his book, and that is also symbolic for reasons I'll explain later, he called these tremendous changes the New World Order. So now that I've examined some of the thoughts of those in favor of creating this New World Order, it would next be important to ask and then answer the question as to when it is to arrive. Have those in favor of these changes given us an official date of arrival when this New World Order is going to start? And unfortunately, they have. Aldous Huxley, for one, answered that question when he wrote this in his book in the year 1958. He wrote, "The 21st century will be the era of the world controllers. The year 2000, meaning the beginning of the 21st century, is just 5.5 or 6 years from now." And for the purists in the viewing audience, I know that you are probably saying that the 21st century does not start until the year 2001. I will agree with you, but I would like to show you that this is not how those who reckon time for this conspiracy calculated. In any event, until I do directly discuss the calculations about the year 2000, I will just say that the time is getting closer. Let me summarize all that we've learned so far. We haven't covered all of these points during this video, but those we haven't discussed are inside my book entitled The New World Order. This is what we've covered or will cover in the book, or even cover in later parts of this lecture. The old world is coming to an end. It will be replaced with the new way of doing things, and this new way of doing things will be called the New World Order. The United States will play the major role in bringing this New World Order to the world. Adolf Hitler, the National Socialists, supported the New World Order. The Communists also support the goal of the planners. George Bush wanted the same New World Order that Adolf Hitler, the Communists, and other socialists want. The majority of the people will not readily accept the New World Order, but will be deceived into accepting it by two strategies. One, those in favor of the changes will have become seated in the very thrones of power, generally without the public realizing that fact. Secondly, the old world order will be destroyed all at once after a huge catastrophe, one that was planned by this conspiracy. Let's go back to our list now. The basic tenets of Christianity, which were the base of the old world order, will be replaced with a new way of doing things. These changes to the New World Order are coming shortly, so that the entire structure will be in place by the year 2000. Before I continue, I would like to say this. From this point on, I'll be talking as an historian, not as a Bible student. I happen to be a Bible-believing Christian, but you will notice that what I will be explaining as an historian and researcher will sound like what some Bible readers believe the Bible says about the future. I am aware of that, but I am presenting this information from the pages of history, from your newspapers and magazines, and from the books written by those who support the goals of the New World Order. So please remember that I am saying these things as an historian, not as a Bible student. I would like now to discuss how we, the people in the world, are going to